Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The Prophet, peace be upon him, explicitly mentions there is no such thing as contamination, no such thing as contagion. However, at the end of this very statement, he mentions, flee from the leper, run from the one who has leprosy, just as you would flee from a lion. This raises a question. How can the Prophet, peace be upon him, negate the idea of disease transmission, when in the very same statement he provides a parallel, even contradictory, seemingly contradictory piece of advice that indicates upon the idea that transmission is a possibility? How does one reconcile this prophetic narration? First and foremost, we must be cognizant of the society in which Islam appeared, the context that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was faced with. He was sent to a people entrenched in superstition and myth. Major and crucial life decisions would be made with the help of superstition, such as releasing a bird and basing a decision dependent on the direction that the bird flew. Throwing arrows and making a decision based off the random pattern that the arrows were cast in. Omens were taken from the hooting of an owl or even the month of Safar, the Islamic month of Safar. Amidst all of this, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was sent to posit Allah at the center of everything, to recognize that the prime cause of everything in this universe is Allah. This context actually provides an essential backdrop for us to understand this prophetic narration. The Prophet, peace be upon him, on one hand, is absolutely and conclusively negating the idea of transmission, whereas at the very end of this statement he advises a parallel instruction to avoid somebody inflicted with disease. How do we resolve this apparent contradiction? Imam Bayhaqi, an expert in the sciences of Hadith, explores this phenomena and explains that the negation of transmission is relative to the context. So the Arabs believe that transmission occurs independently, beyond the will of Allah. They would ascribe causality to things other than Allah, whereas the reality is that transmission only occurs through Allah's divine will. Imam Bayhaqi further mentions that it is actually very, very possible that a healthy person makes contact with an afflicted person, and that this interaction becomes a cause for the spreading of the disease. It is for this reason that the Prophet, peace be upon him, advised, flee from the leper as you would from a lion. He advised, do not bring diseased camels into contact with healthy ones, because the disease can spread. He also said, when you hear of a plague spreading in a certain land, don't go to that land. It is entirely possible. However, the only difference is that it happens by virtue of the fact that it was predestined by Allah. Shaykh Rashid Ahmad Gangohi, a more contemporary expert of hadith from the Indian subcontinent, provides a similar line of reasoning. He says, what is clear from a survey of the prophetic narrations that exist on issues such as this is that the Arabs believed contagion to possess an autonomous causal effect, independent of any other causative factor. As such, the Prophet, peace be upon him, negated all types of effect. If things of this nature do happen to have some cause, such as interacting with somebody who has the disease, then it is only by the permission of Allah. His comment is actually lengthy, but he concludes with a coherent example that makes it easier for us all to digest. He explains that this is similar to how Allah placed a certain level of effect in medicine, without such medicine having any intrinsic effect on the results. They are therefore no different from rain. When a cloud forms, it appears that there will be rain, notwithstanding that our certainty is not connected to the rain, except if so wished by Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Mufti Muhammad Taqi Uthmani writes in his commentary of his hadith work on Sahih Muslim, and he summarizes very well. The gist is that if it is medically proven that germs of some diseases transfer from one body to another, this does not contradict the negation of contagion in the prophetic narration. What is being negated is an autonomous and independent causal effect that comes about without Allah creating it, which is without doubt disbelief. As for the belief that the transfer of germs could sometimes cause illness, and that all of this is suspended on the will of Allah and predestination by Him, to the point where germs will not transfer if Allah does not will it, or they may transfer without even causing an illness. That is the correct belief. And this line of thinking is not something new that is only recent. You will find classical scholars taking the very same approach. Throughout the centuries, scholars such as Ibn Salah, Imam al-Nawawi, Allama Iraqi, Allama al-Qastalani, or Qastallani according to some, amongst others, many other scholars. And so it is fair to conclude with 2 points. Firstly, real causation belongs exclusively to Allah. He does not require an apparent cause to produce an effect. He can produce any effect without an apparent cause. And secondly, apparent, or what we might call normative causation, does exist, and it exists on an apparent physical level. It may produce an effect, it may not produce an effect. May Allah grant us understanding. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.